Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our schools. Today, I'm joined by a mother of two from a central Texas area where her daughters, 18 and 16, are being confronted with some really controversial issues, even exposed to what some may call grooming in their public school classroom. Jennifer, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, we were connected by other mothers that are experiencing several of the things that we're going to talk about today. And you're one of the few that are willing to, as I call it, say the quiet parts out loud. So, the real reason that we were connected initially was regarding the fact that there is a teacher in your child's classroom who has been a teacher as a male, and as of this year or last year has decided to dress as a female.
Yes.
And were you notified of this?
No, I was not notified. I had no clue. Ironically, my daughter had this teacher in 9th grade.
Okay.
So she's a junior now.
As a male.
As a male. So
Okay.
he went by as a Mr., and then everything seemed to be okay and fine. Last year, she walked past the classroom and kind of did a little walk and then kind of reversed and went backwards and was like, oh, and she's like, yeah, I figured. And I was like, because she told me that story and I was like, okay, interesting. And that was last year, not thinking anything of it this year. So this year,
she backed up because
this man transitioned to a woman or is dressing as a woman.
Correct.
And she's like, oh, okay. Well, it makes a lot of sense because he acted very feminine before.
Okay.
But I'm like, I didn't know that when I had a parent-teacher meetings and stuff like that, it was never anything of alarming. So now, flash forward to this year, I go to every meet the parent night because I want to know who's teaching my children. I want to know what their classroom is like. I want to know who they are. I want to know all the things, but also let them know that, I care about my child's education.
And what do you expect?
Right. Like the curriculum and their expectations for grades and tests and all that kind of good stuff. And so this year, my daughter had said earlier that day, Mom, I just want you to remember that Mr. is now Ms. And we tell her, that Miss and the name of the teacher is there today. You need to be kind. You need to be nice. And I said, I'm sorry. Like, she's like, you need to be nice to her. And she kept using the pronouns as she, her, whatever. And I'm like, just so you know, I'm nice. I've been very nice because I haven't pulled this teacher, you out of this teacher's class yet. I said, because I want to give him an opportunity. So I go into the classroom and it's in a portable because our school has, portables outside. And I noticed that we were not in the normal portable for this teacher.
Okay.
But walk in and he is dressed, as a female, acting very demure, very feminine and, kind of almost shy, like, hello. And use a very, feminine, tone of voice.
Sure.
Appropriating
a woman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
right?
And he's a tall man.
Acting like
and trying
female.
to, very, very, bashful in a way. And, had conversations, said who I was, my daughter, kind of things about my daughter. And he had asked me, what, do you have any questions for me? And I said, I do. So these are the questions that I was not afraid to ask. And I knew going in, I was absolutely going to ask because if I don't, no one's going to ask the questions. So I said, I do. I said, I know that, I know you're teaching U.S. history. I said, but here's the thing. I know we don't see eye to eye ideology-wise, maybe politics, the way, personal, way we live our lives. I said, but here's what I want to know. I need to know if you're going to stick to the curriculum, you're not going to deviate from U.S. history, that you're not going to add your ideology into U.S. history. You're not going to change history of what it is and not put your personal spin on it. And he was like, absolutely not. And, I'm sticking to the strict curriculum. And it's this college level, of how they're doing it. And I said, okay, great. Thank you so much. So then I said, he goes, do you have any other questions? I said, I do. I said, there's some bathrooms outside this portable. And I looked him straight in the eye. And I said, what bathrooms are you going to use? Do you use and are you going to use? And he looked at me very shockingly wow, I can't believe you just asked this. And I looked him straight in the eye. I'm yeah, I want to know. And he's like, well, I use, private bathrooms or the teacher's bathrooms, but I use those. And I said, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. And let's make sure that stays the same Because I do know in this high school, in our district, there is no bathroom policy. That there is, boys can use the girls' bathrooms. Well, hopefully now with Title IX, they shouldn't be, but our school district still has had no
You must
bathrooms.
enforce it. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
about a year and a half ago, there was another male teacher that dressed as a woman who was a transgender teacher.
A different one.
A different teacher.
Okay.
So this is the second one. That teacher is no longer with our district. We found out recently. But when they were at the district, it was right after the bell rang for the last day of class, the last period of classes. Kids were still in the school. Kids were still doing activities and things like that. There was another teacher who saw this, a female teacher saw the male teacher dressed as a woman look around and then walked into the girls' bathroom. And so that's not allowed. Teachers should not be using the students' bathrooms at all. So the teacher had told a parent. That parent did a kind of a grievance and did an open records request and asked for the video. And we never got it. So they denied it. They have continuously denied it. The open records request went to the legal department. The legal department sent it to the Texas OAG's office, Texas Office of Attorney General, Ken Paxton's office. They said, yes, we should be able to get access to the video. And then it was like a long delay because, we forgot to ask for the appeal. And then they asked for an appeal. And the appeal was our appeal, or the school's appeal, was granted by the Texas OAG's office to not release the video for the parents. They said, I guess it was because of security purposes, of like where the cameras are.
Just to confirm,
yes.
It's not a video in the stall or actually in the bathroom.
Out in the hallway.
Literally just a hallway video walking into the bathroom. That's all the parents wanted.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to prove the point. So here's the point of the whole story is, if there was not a problem, if there was no teacher, a male teacher going into the girls' bathroom, you would have said, here's the video. There's nothing to see here.
Right.
But they held it.
Sure.
And they fought for it. So knowing that, I'm worried. My daughter's a female and she's in this high school and I know what's happened. And kids are always, no, that didn't happen. I know it happened. I trust and I know the people who are, telling me that story. I didn't stop there with my questioning for this teacher of the parent night. He's like, okay, is there any other questions? I said, I do. I said, and I knew the answer because the portable we were in, my daughter who had graduated also had a class in this room. And I know the teacher, she was in the classroom too. And I said, is this your classroom? He goes, oh no, it's not my classroom. I said, oh, where is it? He goes, oh, it's across the way. It's in the other portable XYZ. I said, oh, why are we in here then? I'd like to see that classroom. Like, why are we not in your classroom? And he had said, well, it's being fumigated for crickets or something. And that I was like, interesting. Interesting that they would fumigate immediately on a night when parents are coming to the school, that kind of thing. So I do question that. But I did ask my daughter, later that evening after she was done her sport activities, she was eagerly waiting for me to come home. Like, how did this go? Because she's sympathetic to this person because he's a nice person. And, she uses the term she, and I'm like, I said, I was very nice. I was very kind. I said, but here are the questions I asked. And I told her, I said, I asked about the bathrooms. I asked about the classroom not being able to go into his portable and about the curriculum. And she's like, okay. She's like, but mom, there's nothing in the classroom that I can say like, that's weird. And I said, she's like, what are you asking for? I said, I want to know if there's flags, if there's memorabilia, if there's anything to do with that, him being a,
with the pride agenda.
Yeah, the pride agenda.
That's what it is.
Or the transgender agenda.
Right.
I think that
you can say it. I mean, say it. Like,
yes,
that's
it's the trans. And I was like, I said, and I told her, I said, I have friends who are gay, but it's the transgender movement, I think, has commandeered every one of these movements.
Yes.
And they're tired of it. I'm tired of it. So, and it's the groomers. And that's my concern.
Right.
So she and I had a normal conversation, but she knew I came in asking questions. And what was really interesting is as I was walking around the school, parents knew that I had this teacher and that I was there and I was going to go meet the teacher night. But parents were saying, Jennifer, did you meet him yet? Did you see him? I said, no, I'm going. It's the last one because it's in a portable. And after I did, multiple parents were asking, what did you ask? Did you ask any questions? I said, oh yeah. And I told them my questions. And they were like, oh my God, I cannot believe you asked those questions. They were thankful that I did.
Right.
But I was like, but why aren't you? You have every right to ask. So as I was done my personal one-on-one, or not, there was people in the room that knew I was asking these questions for this teacher. Another couple came in and they're like, hey, and I said, hey, great to talk to you. Hey, great to see you. their son is in the same is in a class with this gentleman. And by the way, we can't get our kids out of this class because it's an AP class,
Right.
and there's no you can take
Very
them
good.
out, but they go to a remedial on level class. So my
So you
daughter's a
use-
junior. I need her to be in a good place for college and all the
Sure.
things. But this other family, the same thing. But she's like, well, you asked all the questions, right? I said, yeah. And I told her the questions. She's like, oh, well, I don't have to ask. I said, no, you do need to ask. I can't be the only one asking these questions.
Yeah.
They're hard questions. But if everyone starts asking the questions, then they need to know we're all watching.
Yes.
So they need to stop being scared to it's not being confrontational. I did it very professionally, very kindly. I didn't have to be a negative, harsh person having a normal conversation. Because if he came back, and one of the things I told my daughter, I said, if he came back with a harsh, like, why do you care where I go to the bathroom? It's inappropriate for you to ask. And I would have come back and said, you know what? I know that there was a previous teacher who dressed as a woman, who's a man dressed as a woman, who went into the girls' bathroom. We've been denied access to the video to confirm it from the school. But I said, I don't need this ever to happen again. So I didn't have to go there, but I was ready and armed to further the conversation of him asking me, like, I have every right. I'm the parent.
Also, just to be clear, I have 2 daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about the parents that are a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
The fact is, I don't want a grown man with a penis in the bathroom with my daughters.
Right. I don't either.
And I don't think
I don't either.
I
don't
don't
want him in the
any
locker
other
room.
right.
I don't want
And so
anywhere.
so why would you ask that? That's why.
Right.
Because you should not, anyone with male genitalia should not be entering a space where there are young ladies.
Well, here's what I tell my daughter all the time is she wants to affirm that man as a woman. I said that he will never be a woman. It's mental illness. And I've said this probably more than a dozen times to her. I said, my stance on this is he's mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, it's
gender dysphoria. Right. That's
and I said,
real...
so the same thing if someone was anorexic, I would not want to tell that person, you shouldn't eat any more food. You know what? You are fat. That you're overweight. That's the mental, illness that someone has. They need therapy.
Yeah.
So I said, this person may think that they're a woman. They should go in a woman's bathroom. No.
Yeah.
So we have these hard conversations. My daughter is 16 and it's a challenge. It's almost every day there's a new conversation, a new challenging conversation because I feel, has been groomed and indoctrinated with this ideology of it's okay to accept anybody and everybody. But it's okay to ignore that there's a mental illness.
That's the same thing with me. Is when I was growing up, a thinner figure was the rage, and we didn't have social media, so it wasn't crammed into our throats like that. But I remember, watching Dawson's Creek or Friends or the shows that. I'm aging myself, but there you go.
I was watching,
and those were the girls, and they were thinner, and I was an athlete and I developed hips and things a little bit earlier. And I can remember feeling very insecure going through development. And now the aesthetic, if you will, for girls, I think a lot of it stems from kind of I would say Kim Kardashian, bigger, fuller, voluptuous body. Great, and that's fine for anybody that's naturally like that, but you've got the rise and lots of even young girls being pushed to surgeries and all these things, but now they've got phones and it's being crammed down their throat. And so if you don't look like a girl, let me be clear, if you don't look like a fully developed woman and you look like a girl and you're going, wait a second, I don't look like that. Maybe I'm not a girl. And you've got this constant, you need to affirm. You need to do this. You've got this detransitioner now. Her name is Chloe Cole, who talks about how she was effectively groomed into believing that because, now she's been diagnosed with as on the autism spectrum, but because she was not the voluptuous shape that is the rage right now, and because she tended to play more with the boys and have a mindset of things that were interesting to the boys, that she must just be a boy. And now, obviously, she talks about being regretful because she's had a double mastectomy. But I guess back to you and I, when we were growing up, it was that thin, and we didn't look at particularly girls who had eating disorders.
Right. I mean, I was a tomboy growing up.
Same. I was.
From a large family, tomboy, but I also played girl things and Barbies and all the things.
Yeah, but we didn't tell people that had the the body dysmorphia.
Right.
I remember that thought that they were too fat or thought, that they were too flat or
We didn't shame them.
Any of this. We didn't shame them. And when I was in college, the girls that did develop eating disorders and things like that, you didn't like affirm, oh yeah, go take that laxative or go throw up that meal or whatever. That would be insanity.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. My daughter, multiple conversations, but yesterday our conversation also we added into the girls' body shame.
Yes.
And she goes, I said, what does that mean to you? And she said, well, it could be girls are too skinny or girls are too big, or they're not as pretty or whatever, but they're body shaming them left and right. So it's what is being done within themselves, within the schools.
Right.
And then you have this teacher, and this is one of the things I want parents to know is my daughter has had they're tough classes. She's like AP classes this year.
Yeah.
And she's in 2 sports. One's a club sport and one's a school sport. So she's really busy. So she's struggled and she's had, some tough, beginning of like tests and things like that. But this teacher, she said, Mom, he was so nice. He was so nice to me because he really understood what I was going through. And he was, really kind. And I had said thank you to him during that one-on-one or that meet the parent night. But now I'm more concerned because this is the beginning of a groomer of someone potentially, oh, I'm going to be nice to her because she's struggling. I think he now knows who I am and that I'm watching, but that's where things start. Cause my daughter thinks that like, Mom, he's not a groomer. They're not grooming us because kids in high school, they know who they are. They know their sexuality. They know if they're gay or if they're lesbian or bisexual or heterosexual, whatever. And I said, and she goes, because maybe I would see it maybe in elementary and middle school because that's more informative ages. And I said, sweetie, let me just tell you, do you know the amount of girls who are being sex trafficked in high school? I said, these are the girls who are sad, maybe depressed, or boys and girls, because they're happening on both sides, sad, depressed, frustrated, who are upset. They see that vulnerability and they want to comfort and they want to introduce like, oh, I'm a nice person. And I worry about the grooming,
sure.
And this is what I'm watching for this individual because he was nice to her.
Right. We even the grooming, of course, and something else that goes a lot, right? It's on a parallel path. It's that desensitization to all of this, right? Look, we've got, I remember it used to be that you had homosexuals that wanted to get married.
Yeah.
And that was a big movement. And that happened. And then, but it hasn't stopped with, now you've got the trans movement, right? And you and I would be labeled as TERFs, right? Trans exclusionary radical females.
Yeah, it's a new term. I mean, all these terms. So it's hard to keep up.
Right.
There's 100,000
right.
of them now.
That's what, because we have daughters and we're like, no, a boy does not become a girl. And no, you can't become a boy.
No.
I don't actually care. I mean, I do care, but regardless of if you have been, someone has been convinced to give themselves a mastectomy or to stop puberty or whatever, your chromosomes are either XX for females, XY for males.
Yes.
Period.
Yep. And I don't believe that these kids believe that it's just one or the other.
Right.
And it's sad because I never raised my child or both daughters that there was anything other than that.
Right. And that's the
desensitization.
Right.
They're just like, they're
desensitized to it. Right.
It's okay. It's how they feel. It's what they feel. And I'm like, I can feel like I'm a 21-year-old again. And I can do, or I could be an 85-year-old woman and get all those benefits from whatever, it's like, I could be, whatever. And I said, but does it make it right? No.
Right.
And you shouldn't have to believe their dysphoria. You don't have to believe and affirm their mental illness. And that's what I tell her.
Right. But you can encourage the treat. Like that's the thing. If someone is struggling with that, I want them to get the help that they need so that they feel comfortable and they know that they are loved and have value and purpose and that there's a lot of great things that you can do with your life.
Yeah.
But you cannot change your chromosomal makeup.
No. And I do encourage my daughter. I'm like, if you have friends who are struggling, they need to get help. They need to go see someone. Talk to an adult. Talk to a therapist.
Right.
Because there's something more going on in their life then there is that they're trying to portray a different, like they're kind of hiding from something.
Something's wrong, right?
Something's
wrong, and everybody understands that. But
Yeah.
this whole gender affirming, right? I always love when people put these really positive names on gender affirming.
Right.
Your chromosomes affirm what you are,
And I
right?
don't go by cis,
Right.
Like the
Right.
terms, I'm like, it's a made up word. I don't use it.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of it when
Yeah.
we're talking about really the parent empowerment movement.
Yes.
Right now, we're having a conversation about that transparency aspect because it's not, we're talking about your own personal experience that your daughter has, but it's not just with having teachers that go 1 year they're male and the next year they dress as a female. It's also those radical books that are, Every Boy is Blue or Magenta, or there's all these things that's like trying to normalize sexual abuse, violence, rape, incest, human sex trafficking. It's all of these things that people are trying to introduce to our children and, quite frankly, oftentimes hide it from us.
Yes.
Because you still haven't seen the classroom.
Right.
No pictures have been sent home. Have you been invited back by the principal? No.
No.
They haven't said, come see this classroom.
No. So I'm going to continue to work on that.
Yeah.
But one thing I will tell parents to do is if you're not going to meet the parent night, shame on you. You need to.
Yeah.
Because you need to see what's going on in the classroom. And I would say start with kindergarten because parents don't realize, and maybe you do, but if you don't realize that the teachers have their own personal libraries in their classrooms, that they introduce these books.
They curate. Yes.
And they don't have to be in the library.
Right.
They can just be in the private books and take photos, go in there and take photos of the room and see what it starts with.
Sure.
Volunteer in elementary, volunteer in middle school, and even in high school. It's harder in high school.
Yeah.
But it starts young, that there are teachers that are introducing these books.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You shared with me a conversation about with your daughter who I've seen a picture of. She's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And looks like a gorgeous 16-year-old girl. And you had a conversation about her sexuality recently where she kind of sprung something on you that was surprising simply because of what her interests have been, but the conversation where we're talking about the grooming and the desensitization. Would you share that with our viewers about that conversation of her talking about wanting to grow up and marry a man, and that's what she's interested in, but...
So I guess there was an instance where, let me kind of backtrack a little bit of like having friends over, having girlfriends over, sleepovers that we always had, like we did it in elementary, middle school. But one of the last sleepovers we had was she had 2 girlfriends over, not thinking any of it. They're sweet girls, adore them. Yeah. Well, didn't realize until I was driving them all home, the next morning, and I had sensed something like, there's a weird sense about
it.
Yes. And I asked her, I said, hey, what's going on there? Are they flirting? Are they dating? And she's like, no. And I said, what do they do? And she's like, okay, I'm not supposed to say anything, but they're flirting and they're.
Wait, that's important. She said, I'm not supposed to say anything.
Yes, like I don't want to say anything. Yes. She's like, because she's trying to keep their confidence. And I'm like, okay. Well,
no, that's sad. I mean, I think it's important to point that out. There is an attempt, unfortunately, by far too many people to try and sever that parent-child bond.
Yes.
Right. And that's, so I just want to highlight
and
it
was just the
her
kids
saying, well, I'm not, I'm not supposed to say anything, but
they, and she's like, well, they're flirting. They're kind of starting to date. And I was like, okay. I said, but here's the thing. I said, they just spent the night at my house. I said, I don't let you have boys in the room. I don't let boys up in your bedroom. I don't let boys sleep over. Right. You respect me. I respect you. Yeah. So for them to come over and knowing that there's something going on, they could do a lot of the same things a boy and girl can do that you can do with a boy. She's like, okay, I get that. And I said, so are you part of this? She's like, no. So that was like the first thing of like, okay, now I've got to really monitor sleepovers and friends and who she's hanging out with. Flash forward, she had said that, that she liked girls. And I was like, okay. And she was really scared to always tell me because she knew my stance of, my, the heterosexuality and I'm married and all the things. And then she finally had told me, but she was very, just very sad and nervous about it. Okay. But then she's also said, but Mom, I will marry a man. I will have kids one day. And I was like, thank you for that. I was so happy to hear that. But it makes me wonder, And I've had moms who have boys in the same grades as my kids, and they're like, "What's up with all these girls?" Because they're all lesbian, they're all
Yeah.
bisexual.
Yes, I'm
And the
hearing
boys
that.
are like, "What the heck is going on?" And so it is a concern for a mom to like go, what happened? And it's really started in middle school.
Yes.
And if you're not aware of what's going on, it's something is going on in those grades that this is where a lot of the girls, I was like, how many girls are there that were bisexual but gay or lesbian?
Mhm.
So it was something that was really hard, and I was like thankful, but she's still very sympathetic. I don't know how she fully feels again about the girls. I mean, she's really busy, so she's not dating and she doesn't want to date. I'm like, thank you, Lord. But yeah, it's sad because I'm like, wow, I didn't raise her to that or around that environment. And and then we go back through the conversations of they're born that way, or they're, it's who they're hanging out with. But never had she talked about it until these people that she became friends with in middle school. It's never something she ever had sensed, that I had sensed, or anything like that.
Yeah, I did a podcast recently with, a mom out of Central Texas named Hillary, and
Mhm.
she got involved in the parent empowerment movement for a reason that is within this realm, which was when her child got into middle school, her and she talked about it publicly. Her daughter's one of her very close friends, um, who was struggling with depression and anxiety. There's a pattern. There tends to be a pattern here.
Mhm.
Was being effectively groomed by 3 teachers at the school to explore her gender identity, to explore being a boy, and they were calling her by a pseudonym of her name. Her parents didn't know.
Oh my
It
gosh.
became a whole thing, in wanting to keep confidence and continue that
Mhm.
relationship that her daughter would have. She kind of continued the conversation with her daughter, and it was when this girl, who was being groomed to transition, and clearly that wasn't helpful in what she was struggling with, because she then began self-harm and suicidal ideation, which is when Hillary said, "Okay, nope, nope, can't. This is, I have to report this." And she went to the parents, and they didn't know that this child at this public school in middle school, and so she said the same thing. It's this really hyper sexualized communication
Mhm.
and conversation that adults are facilitating.
Mhm.
They're facilitating what's going on in these conversations, and okay, just accept whatever, instead of one. I just want to say, don't have these conversations in school.
Right. Right. I mean, there was another example when you were talking about that too. A couple years ago, there is a kind of the drill team for the
Yeah.
on the team, and they're girls. Well, a girl was voted in as the leader of their group, the colonel, and
Okay.
then a week later, 2 weeks later, she came out as she was then transgendering. She was transitioning to a boy,
Okay.
and so some of the girls were like, "Oh my gosh! Like now, what's going to happen?"
Yeah.
Ultimately, they had to change the uniform. They had to, because now she was a boy. They had to, completely change, having a pants, because it was all skirts and so forth. It was typically
Sure.
a girls'
It's
organization, right? So ultimately, the girl got in a lot of trouble. She got kicked out, but she ended up becoming the homecoming king that year for school because she was a senior. So like they're normalizing it. They think it's great, that she was on the homecoming court as a boy. So a boy. So there was on the homecoming court.
Mhm.
You've got who's going to be crowned king, who's going to be crowned queen. Well, she was on the boy, she was
Right.
part of the whoever got to be nominated as a king. She didn't win homecoming, but for prom, even though she got kicked out for apparently doing something not appropriate at school, it was more of a drug related thing, as my understanding. She got kicked off the drill team because of that, but they still like encouraged, and I'm sure
So
everybody
clearly this child was in crisis,
in
right?
crisis.
And and
Absolutely,
and this
absolutely,
is kind of my problem, because that's not the first story. I've seen
yeah.
stories all
Oh,
across the country, quite
mhm.
frankly, of someone that has, decided to dress up as the opposite sex and transition in
Yeah,
whatever way, that they are then, yes, a part of the homecoming quarter,
yeah,
or they're elevated because they're being, it's almost like idolatry. Like, they're being because you're so brave, and
yeah. Oh
yay
yeah,
for you, and it's like, "Hold on, something's wrong. How do
right,
we help this child?
right.
Why are we
Yes.
affirming something that is going to lead them down a path?" Because there's been studies done that it's 90% of kids that struggle with gender dysphoria. It's just the
Mhm.
wait it out strategy.
Yeah,
You wait,
yeah.
and they quite frankly, go through all the
Let your brain
insanity
develop.
right. You let your brain
Well,
develop. You
yeah.
let your body develop through
Yes.
puberty, because it's not like there's a
Yes.
switch that clicks on at your 11th, 12th, 13th, whatever birthday, and you just
Right.
you wait it, and then they're okay.
Yes.
And not saying that they don't struggle with whatever caused some trauma and some anxiety and some stress, but
Mhm.
they realize I can't turn into whatever it is.
Yeah. So there was another instance in our school district a couple years ago now, but a boy dressed as a girl and decided to use the girls' locker room. And girls were changing in the locker room. And in the middle of changing, a boy walks in and because he identified as a girl. And the girls were like, what the heck is going on? They went
Right.
to the principal. Principal basically had said, girls, it's you're the, you need to be more sensitive. You need to be more understanding and sympathetic. So they said, if you wanted to dress in privacy, we can give you a little dressing tent.
We can give you.
Yes. So everybody has to be accommodated, or they're accommodating this boy who wants to pretend
Who has male genitalia.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
I just like this is
Yes.
what is happening.
Yes.
And this goes back to the entirety of the conversation.
Mhm.
This grooming, because I just sat and watched the Olympics
Mhm.
and watched two men
Mhm.
beat the snot out of women.
Yes.
Like, let's be clear, to win gold medals,
Yes.
they are men.
Yes.
Their testosterone levels are men. Their chromosomes are men.
Yes.
They are men.
I have a hard time.
But young people are being groomed, and you do have people that are,
Yes.
well, let them.
They put him in a hotel room.
Yes.
The school district's paying for hotel
And
rooms for this boy to be in a hotel room with two girls. And we get information. People reach out. They're silent. They
Right.
need to come
And
out
that's what
of
we're
the
trying.
shadows.
That's what this parent
to
empowerment
share.
movement is about. Is we have got to talk about what's
Yes.
going on in our schools.
Yes.
And how the culture is being changed and
It's being
has been
accepted.
it's right. Well, it's an intentional
Mhm.
huge shift to the left.
Yes.
And I have this conversation a lot of times with parents and colleagues, and for people that are trying to understand not just this LGBTQIA, right? We've got the A now. You have to be
I
an
just say
ally.
whatever
You
alphabet.
must put whatever
Yes.
the rainbow. In fact, I've actually been asked about this. I've got a rainbow right. My
I
daughter.
saw that. I was actually going to ask too.
Yeah, well, my daughter is 7.
I was thinking the 7-year-old.
And she makes
loom.
these bracelets,
Yes.
and
Yes.
she,
Yes.
she loves rainbows,
Yes.
as little children
Yes.
do, and she sees the rainbow as the gift that God gave to the world
It started
following
with
the flood.
Christianity,
Right?
started
That's
all of
and
it.
so
Yes,
I
and
do
taking
I
it
get
over.
asked this, and I talk about that like my child. So I have different bracelets that she
Yeah.
makes me, and I love them, and I wear them because it's my 7-year-old, and
Yeah.
and let's be clear, that was very intentional, right? Of this
Yeah.
movement of let's
Mhm.
co-opt something that children love.
Mhm.
Little girls love rainbows and unicorns and hearts, and that's what we're,
So
drawing
I
and all
say,
that stuff.
watch what they're putting in the
Well,
elementary.
I mean, that's part of it, and so she has no clue
Right.
what
They're innocent.
right? But it has this whole mentality, and it starts so young,
Mhm.
so that now we have a whole generation that goes, "Oh, it's okay that all these boys are swimming against our women
Right.
athletes." I was an athlete growing up. I couldn't play against. I was a good athlete.
Mhm.
I can't play against boys.
So my daughter, who's an athlete, and she's really good at her sports, but she is sympathetic to the movement of this other.
That's it. They're
Sympathetic to it, and is very kind to them. But she draws the line when it comes to the girls and the boys' sports, and even the bathrooms, because she's like they should have their own.
Yes.
And which is great to see that she's like
Okay,
has a
she
right
gets
and
that right.
wrong, but she's sympathetic to letting them dress whatever they want. And I'm sympathetic as they're humans,
Yes.
as adults. But I don't think it's appropriate
in a school.
in teachers coming in and bringing their sexual ideas
That's it.
and their preferences into the school.
That's it.
Growing up, I didn't know any teacher. I didn't know their wives' names.
That's right.
I didn't know if they were married.
That's
I
right.
didn't know where they lived. I didn't know I didn't need to know because
Yes.
they were just teaching me.
Right.
Now, I know all the different teachers who are gay because they've said, "Oh, here's my wife. It's a female teacher. Here's my wife or my husband, whatever that is." And I'm like, great, but my kids don't need to know that.
Right.
They just need to know that you're going to teach them what you're supposed to be teaching on the curriculum.
Right.
And now we have men dressing as women that I need, now it's confusing to the kids. It's already a confusing time anyway in high school, the whole hormonal thing.
Yes.
But going from 9th grade and then 2 years later going, okay, now he's a she. I'm supposed to call him a her. middle school, there was a woman, female teacher that had gone by Nix, not Mr., not Miss. She's a Miss, but it goes by Nix because it's a non-binary, whatever. But
wait, hold on.
So
sorry,
sorry. Yes, just remember this.
Wait, so in place of, so if her last name is Smith,
yes,
instead of saying Miss Smith, it's Nick Smith.
Yes, because it's not a male or a female, so she wants to be known as no gender. Yes,
and I honestly haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah. That was like a year or two ago that I'm like, I just remember, I was like, oh yeah, that teacher in middle school.
I mean, that's so much of it's the desensitization, but it's also you must play my game.
Yeah, so I'm saying you're forcibly having
and
to
if you're
accept.
Not,
yes,
the speech police are going to come.
Right.
And then your life will be ruined because you're mean, you're bad, you're bigoted, you're phobe, right?
Mm-hmm. All of it.
When all I'm saying is, this doesn't belong in my classroom.
Doesn't belong in my classroom. And I mean, sorry that you are mentally ill, that you have some crisis going on.
Right.
That you're confused in what you think and you believe is who you are, where we know you're not because we know you're a male or you're a female. You will not be the opposite sex.
Right.
You will never be a woman. You will never be a man if you're the opposite sex.
Right.
And I shouldn't have to agree to that.
Right.
So, yeah, I could be, I could have a mental illness where I think I'm someone else.
Sure.
I mean, is it right? No. You would worry for me. You would be concerned. Like,
Correct.
Jennifer needs to probably see a medical professional to figure out what's going on, with her, because she's identifying or she believes that she's a 22-year-old, college student. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a hard thing. And it's, as a parent right now, it is so hard to deviate and to sometimes I'm walking on eggshells with my daughter because I don't want to upset her because, I want her to talk to me. I want her to tell me what's going on. I want her to tell me what, class assignments are going on, that she has this teacher and how sympathetic he is to her. So my eyes and ears are perked up all the time. And I stop whatever I'm doing to have these conversations with her. But I tell you, it is, if my daughter's 16 and a junior, I can't imagine elementary, middle school coming up. Like you have a 7-year-old.
7-year-old.
I mean, God bless, because I don't know how things, if we don't stop things or we don't.
So this is what we're going through. And this is what the parent empowerment movement is about. The 4 pillars of parent empowerment are transparency. We're having a conversation about the transparency in the classroom, in the dress code. Like, let's not even talk about how that a lot of these districts are not enforcing dress codes, even for the students, right? I have a mom whose kid is at a local high school. And when he was, I can't remember if he was 14 or 15, but it was when he was a freshman and she dropped him off. And I would say she's much more, maybe apolitical or not, or even left leaning, right? But just a mom, like she has 2 boys and knows what I do and my opinions. And she told me after she dropped her kid off at the first day of high school, and she said, Mandy, there are 17, 18-year-old fully developed women on this high school campus in biker shorts and sports bras.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, how is my child supposed to sit there and learn? And I was like, welcome to the parent empowerment movement. And she's like, why are they not enforcing the dress code?
They don't.
They don't.
They don't.
And I would say the same thing for grown adults. You can have a dress code. You should have a dress code.
Absolutely. But then you have to beg you have to have the conversation.
You have to have the conversation.
You should be in a male clothing versus not female clothing.
Correct. That's correct.
So I don't know what
your mental health issues should not impact my child's development.
Yes.
And that's where it actually comes down to, because there will be a time, when I'm having to face these conversations. In fact, I've already had to face some of them. We used to have Netflix, and thinking that I was just letting my kids watch shows that I had researched.
Yeah.
Ada Twist, I think is what it was. Like science, like you're a girl, you could be a scientist too.
Yeah.
And I remember my daughter coming up, and she was probably 5, saying, asking me, can 2 girls get married? And I remember going, what? And it wasn't even, it was just, why?
And she's 7.
She was 5 at the time. And that's when we got rid of that. And I was like, I don't want to have this conversation with my 5-year-old.
It's a lot of big media. I mean, Disney.
It's not, again, it's not that I want, her brain is developing. I need her brain to develop and go to age appropriate things. This should not be going into our classrooms, and it shouldn't be going into our stuff, but I can control that. I was like, cancel.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's as a parent,
So our kids,
we're constantly having to try and like guard
Well, we were talking earlier about like the technology.
Yes.
My daughter's a Chromebook. So now she fact checks me.
Okay.
Every time.
And she fact checks you using
Chromebook, using Google. Right.
Right.
And I even
that
said
is
yesterday.
right, that we know. I mean, you can put it in, it suppresses them. In fact, I just released a podcast with Congressman Chip Roy, who is, an outspoken advocate for parents. And we talk about the transgender issue.
Yeah.
We can see right now, it's being suppressed.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Absolutely. So we had a conversation yesterday because she, again, brings home conversation to, hey, Mom, I'm doing this paper. I've got to do this essay, whatever, for class. And it's about, what was it about? It was more about, college kids and should they be allowed to have free education, free college? And I said, okay. And she's like, I think they should. Everybody should be able to get a free college. And I said, okay, but who's going to pay for that? She's like, well, it should be paid for by taxes. And I said, okay. I said, there is a lot of programs out there. There's Pell Grants. There's all these kinds of.
The GI Bill.
Right. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
So I said, we have an opportunity to pay for that. And I said, and the kids can get, scholarships. She's like, yeah, but you have really good grades and you have to do a lot of volunteering. And I said, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. But she had a really hard time about, that everybody should have an education. I said, well, there's some college degrees like art, philosophy, whatever they are, that are just, there's no career. There's no path to earn a living with some of these.
Gender studies
yes,
is one that you're seeing.
Right.
Like,
it's like, where is that going to take that person? And she's like, well, I just think it should be fine because they're learning. They want to learn. Sure.
About what and for what? What is the purpose of education?
So everybody doesn't have a right to go to college. You have a right for up until 10th to 12th grade, that every child will be able to get an education in the United States at zero cost. I mean, we're paying our taxes.
Yeah.
But for you to go to college, it shouldn't just be paid for, by the government. I said, we already have that right now, and it's not gone well. I said, where they're just taking and they're writing off student debt. I said, why is that fair? Why don't they pay my house off? Why don't they pay for a car for you? Why don't they pay for a kid who is doing...
What about the 75% of people that don't go get a 4-year degree?
Right. I said,
that are making our world
plumbers,
go round.
The electricians. I said, or the hairstylists. I said, should we be paying for them? I said, why is it only certain people get that taken from, that debt taken away and not everybody else?
And for how long?
Right.
How long are we paying? Right. If you just want to be a student forever, are we paying for that?
Right. Well,
what if you get a degree and you want to change a path?
Right.
What if you get a degree?
Yes. And I said, there's kids who are lifelong students. They don't ever want to graduate because then they have to actually face life and they have to get a job. And I said, there's like the 5-year degree, the 6-year degree, and she's like, well, there's doctors who are, in such debt. I said, I get that. But we're thankful for those doctors. I think they do get paid pretty darn well later on. And then it went into government, healthcare. And that everybody then should, get free healthcare. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, these are the conversations I'm having with my daughter where I know where it's coming from.
Right.
And where her stances are.
Right.
So now I'm very cautious and I'm watching and I'm listening and I'm glad she's coming to me. But parents need to see and get involved and worry. And if your kids aren't talking to you and letting you know what they're saying at school or what their assignments are, start talking.
Yeah.
Ask your kids some questions. I asked them, like, how was your school? How was school today? We have these conversations. And we do have sometimes long drive times to sports, practices and stuff, which is great. And I'm thankful for those. But yeah, so now we're talking about healthcare and how we should be paying for everybody's healthcare. And I'm like, well, you have to be careful with that. I'm like,
who's we?
Right, who's we? The United States. Well, in Europe, I said, Europe pays more in taxes and they have great healthcare. I said, yeah, Canada, the same thing. Guess what? They all come here. They all come here for procedures. I said, here, if you were an older person, they may not allow you to have, because it's government run. And here, how much are we in debt as a country? Trillions. I said, do you think we run our country very well? No. So now add healthcare onto that. I said, we do.
And who are we paying for? Because right now our border's open.
I said, right. I know. I said, they're depleting our
resources. Is it like where, and who's paying for it? And are you paying for it?
So
and by the way, in Canada that the death movement, whatever they're calling it, when what is it called?
Yeah, I know.
Dignity and death. They give them fancy, fun names.
Yes.
But now there's stories coming out where the counselors, the health counselors are encouraging older people who are past their working years.
Right.
You can just die in one of these death pods over here.
Right. And
Just get you- like,
I told her,
and
even
I'm
though
like,
we didn't
"What?"
if you didn't get vaccinated, then I said, good example, if you did not get vaccinated, but you were on a transplant list and you were to get a
They were
transplant
nice.
lungs or hearts, and I said, those people that did not take the vaccination were not given the opportunity to get a transplant because they were not worthy of it. I said, so how do you think this is going to happen? Like if we went all 100% socialistic ways of, healthcare in the United
We can
States.
look at Venezuela, who
Right.
used to be one of
Right.
the top producers in the world, and now
So this is
they
what
eat they're eating animals.
Right.
It's horrifying what's
Right.
going on. They've become one of the poorest.
Right.
We can look at, Cuba. We can look at.
There's a lot of countries.
So
And I
many
told her, I said,
countries.
everyone comes here. They all want to come here
Right.
because we have a great
It's
system.
not just comes here. They do. Anyone that has money comes here for all of the work, especially if you are on the newer side of, in terms of breakthroughs with, if you have a rare cancer, if you have a rare disease, you come here and do anything you can to pay for it. We know that. We hear about all these really wealthy people that come to our country, but also that development, right? I always think back. So my mom has cancer, and she was one of the recipients of, she has chronic lymphocytic leukemia.
I'm so sorry.
And well, thank you. But I feel incredibly blessed that she's been here for 15 years, because I remember when she was diagnosed with it, and they said, thank goodness it wasn't the acute kind, because that will take you out in less than a year. And but there was a drug that had gone through trials, and it was she was going to be one of the early people to do it. And she got it, and they expected her to live about 5 years, and we're on year 15. It's because of this cancer drug that is now the standard of care. But I say that because if we were in another country, I wouldn't have my mom here with me today.
Right.
Because that drug was not available.
Right.
It was not being tested. That is an American company that is incentivized to try things.
Yes. But that's another thing too, is she brought up was, I said, in the United States, majority of all pharmaceuticals are founded and are created here in the United States. And I said, it's a good and bad evil, because she brought up the debate and said, Kamala Harris had said, I'm going to put a cap on pharmaceutical, costs of what someone would pay. And I said, that's great. I said, someone else brought that up before. It was more of a Trump thing, and she, kind of copied it. But I said, but if we don't allow pharmaceutical companies to create these drugs, and I know the pricing is really outrageous at times, I said, then there will not be innovation with pharmaceuticals.
Right.
I said, so, and the same thing with our medical care. We are like the founders of a lot of technology and medical. I said, so I understand it. There has to be a give and take, but I don't think having 100% the United States government paying for it with our taxes is the best use of our money, because it will be stifled and we will never have technology.
Right.
But these are the conversations I'm having. So it was interesting, because then I said to my daughter, there was something, she fact checked me. She pulls her computer out and she's like, I'm going to fact check you, and I'm like, well, don't look on Google. She's like, looks at me, Mom. And I said, no, look on another browser. But they won't allow them because
on her government issued iPad, right?
Government issued Chromebook. Yep.
Yeah. Which is a whole other thing. I've got schools. Another, they're forcing. So that's, I'm blessed to send my child to a school that they do not use technology.
Which is great.
And I say that because, one, it's a public charter school. It's a public school. You can do this.
Yeah.
But number two, my husband owns a digital marketing company. And so I'm fully aware of the internet and how it can be used to, do really wonderful things and whatnot. But our kids' brains are developing. I mean, girls upwards of 25, boys 30 plus. And we are cramming this technology down their throats multiple hours a day in our public school system. And if you're a parent that can't get into, there's 76,000 parents on the charter wait list right now.
Wow.
And if you're not lucky enough to get into one of these public schools that say no thank you, your kid is handed at kindergarten technology.
Yes.
Taxpayers are on the hook to pay for this technology, right?
Yes.
So that's another thing that just drives me insane, because
and they're filtering it as they want to see it filtered.
That's right. Then you've got Google that's filtered. It is wild. And then you're having to have conversations about price controls.
Yes.
With your 16-year-old.
These are pretty deep and heavy conversations. I'm glad I'm having conversation with her. But it's interesting because she keeps saying, how these some, kids like they know who they are and they know their identity. And I was like, Avery, I said, you and I have great conversations. We use adult words. We
Right.
use we're using normal conversation. We're not baby talking. I said, I know you're confident in who you are, but you have a lot of development to go. And so some of these kids, I believe they're being told they know who they are at this age and they know everything, but they're also being fed the technology. They're researching things. And so it is interesting how it's being spun
Yeah.
and what they're giving. And they should have options of having like different types of browsers and not just one, because we know that Google has been one to
Suppress.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And particularly in the younger ages, having technology in high school is one thing. But when you're going in the K through, 7th, 8th grade, it's a non-starter. But I want to make sure that parents understand how that this is not just with the transgender. We started with that conversation, this desensitization. But if we really walk back to what is going on, because we all feel it. And now we almost all see it. Like, what is happening here? And it really is an attempt by the left, quite frankly, to infiltrate our institutions, our public education institutions, our education institutions, our higher education institutions, our medical institutions, right? Because you got to affirm this, you can't, or any of the other things. It's infiltrating our higher ed thought-provoking leader institutions. We've got, we just watched Harvard go through a horrifically embarrassing display of where DEI is absolute nonsense in terms of, I don't want someone leading one of the foremost leaders in higher ed.
Right.
Putting someone forward simply because of the color of their skin. I don't want my doctors to be there simply because of the color of their skin. I can't even imagine, people who are going under the knife for heart surgery or any of these surgeries. And it's like, well, did you get here because you actually know how to do it or because we lowered standards and you have a certain amount of melanin?
Well, there's just an airline.
It's along
that.
Right.
The airline.
Who's going to fly your airplanes?
Delta has their DEI. Guess what? They had two pilots just crashed.
Right. So how did we get here? And I want to remind people that back in the early 1900s, there was a Italian Marxist by the name of Gramsci. And he really kind of was one of those that was pushing this narrative of quite frankly, Marxism or socialism there. And when the proletariat didn't rise up, but his thoughts influenced the Frankfurt School in Germany, which influenced a gentleman named Herbert Marcuse, who then came to America in 1930s, 40s-ish, who then got with a college students at UC, I don't know, University of California. I don't know if it was Berkeley or Irvine or what it was, but he got with a named Roy Deutschke, and they realized, okay, Marxism doesn't work. It's not working like we thought, where all the workers would just rise up together. They actually, the Industrial Revolution actually increased the standard of living. And so, oh no, what can we do? Well, they said, well, let's get those that are disenfranchised, because now the workers aren't disenfranchised, right? The standard of living is growing. Let's go get urban Blacks and homosexuals, and let's convince them and tell them that they need to unite. Now, that was the first part of Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality, but that's where they said, and we need to infiltrate the institutions. This is where the long march through the institutions comes in. If you don't know what this is, listeners, go look up the long march to the institutions, where they realized if we can't change society, Western civilization, if we can't change them by taking them over with the working class, we will infiltrate all aspects of institutions, higher ed, medical, government, K through 12. And this is what has been going on for decades. And Herbert Marcuse's third wife is the one who started training our Fortune 500 companies on DEI back in the 80s. And here we are now. So that's kind of just a breakdown of like how they intentionally infiltrated the K through 12 education system. And now us parents are going, whoa.
Yeah. It's sad.
It's insane.
It is. It's sad. And they know that they're most vulnerable and they're most gullible. at children because they're learning and they're
That's how they
learning.
change them.
Right. Because my teacher's saying this, it's true. It has to be.
Has to
So, I had a message from another parent yesterday. It was like concerned because there's a new elementary school teacher who is, to say, I mean, she's pride sport. She is politically supporting an opposition, the Palestine and all of these different things. And she's concerned.
Wait, did you just say she's pride and Palestine?
Yes, supporting. And that's all over
I
social
always
media.
find that fascinating.
Yes.
No, I mean, just
right, but the fundamentals, because if you were in Palestine and you were a gay, lesbian, transgender person,
they kill you.
They will kill you.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So I think she's a married woman, but she is a big supporter. All of her social media is all, because I was like, I'm going to go look her up. But these parents are so, she's like, I know you're braver. I know that you can, like, you're someone I could go to. She talked to the principal. No response. So I'm helping give tips of like, okay, do a formal grievance that you don't want your child in that classroom or around this individual because you don't trust what she may be, offering as a teacher.
Right.
And then I'm like, and then put it on social media, go anonymously on some of these pages and see if other parents also have the same concerns.
Because they almost always do.
They do. Right. And they just feel like they're alone.
Correct.
But I tell them, like, be brave.
Yeah.
You have to, but they have to start with the first step of taking a stand for your own child.
Yes.
I'm the biggest advocate for my kids. My daughters know that. I said, if there's ever a situation, I will be there. Don't speak to anybody until I get there. If there's a situation that I need to back you up. And I've always told my daughters, don't lie. Whatever story you tell me, whatever happened, tell me the truth because I'm going in guns blazing. Like, I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
But the same with these parents. Like, I feel like they need to know that they will have other people who will support them.
Right.
There are people and parents that are silent right now. They need to come out of the shadows.
Well, it's scary.
It is.
Especially if you own your own business.
Oh, yeah.
You're not
You're going to get doxxed.
well educated. Yeah. Right. You get doxxed. You can have your business. I've had people tell me this. I've got school board trustees that are afraid they're going to be sued when they term out of there because they're trying to
100%, yes.
raise issues with all this stuff. And it is. It's
they've been censured.
They've been censured. It's very scary.
Oh, yeah.
It's very scary.
We have parents who are getting arrested in our school district. That is actually it's in a federal court that the school district's having to defend. The judge, from all viewpoints, it looks like they're going to trial because they've tried to settle. The school district wants to settle, and the parent is like, you know what? You've got to do X, Y, Z, an apology, and all the things, and it will go to trial.
Yeah.
There's parents who are advocating for there's another parent who just got arrested, a U.S. Marshals no-knock warrant in our school district for advocating for their child. CPS was called.
For what?
She was advocating for her son who has an illness, and apparently that the CPS has been called because this person has tried to advocate for her child, and I guess they had enough of it. I don't know all the details, but I asked her. I said, "Were you really arrested?" She goes, "Oh yeah, U.S. Marshals no-knock warrant for a school district." So we have a police department within our school district. That police department reports to a superintendent.
That's a whole other discussion that we have. This is the whole thing.
Yes.
I hear this all the time about these school district police departments.
Yes.
In fact, in Plainview, the school district police department that's where the little 6-year-old girl was pulled under a table. I know, right? Her grandmother who's raising her, I still talk to her because it is devastating. Plainview ISD, I know, it's horrifying. And she just straight up says, I'm poor, I'm Hispanic, and they just don't care. So the school district did an investigation into this 6-year-old girl engaging in sexual activity, filmed on a government-issued iPad, by the way, kindergartners are handed it, by a boy who had a history of bringing pornography to the classrooms and all of these awful things. And they called it mutually consensual engagement. The police department. Like, first off, 6-year-olds can't consent to anything. Second off, 4 kids involved.
And did they interview the child without the parents' knowledge?
They did that. They left her in the classroom for several days. I mean, and just it was, and this they won't show the mother. Themselves. They will not show the grandmother raising her. The video because it is, quote, child pornography. And in fact, I keep it in my bag because it makes me so angry. I went and did a public information request to get, I said, you can keep the kid's name out of it. I want to know if this kid had any reports of bringing other devices and showing sexualized material to their students. Again, they appealed to the Attorney General's office, and because they are under the age of 10, it's all just horrifying. All of them, all four of them, have been traumatized and experience. What
But had
possessed
that
them to do
mother
that?
had
How'd they
any
do that?
allegations against her of bringing
They'll take your kid away.
Oh, they'll take their child.
But
Absolutely.
this one, it just book shut.
Right.
It's still, I will not let that one die.
I think it's horrible.
It's awful.
So this is what they do. So they have police departments that are policing themselves. They report, our school district reports to the superintendent. Superintendent has he's the only superintendent in Texas that has a permanent restraining order for family violence, because he had an affair and beat up his mistress and all the things and wanted to have the baby aborted, which I'm like, you're a superintendent. You're the highest level of authority in a school district and you wanted to abort a baby. But that's what you have. So your people, and with our school district, they've had 3 chiefs of police in 3 years. 3 years, 3 different people. We have a new one that just got announced last week. So it is a scary time for parents. But yeah, you run the risk of being outed. You run the risk of people hating you or calling you names or whatever. You know what? If I'm going to lose friends over protecting my kid, you were never my friend in the first place. And you know what? I'm a mama bear. Bring it.
That's right.
Because they're coming after our kids. I know there's people say this. There's a candidate right now who says, like, they're not coming for me. They're coming for you.
Yeah.
And I said this to some women that I was at a conference with up in DC recently, Moms for Liberty. But they, and I said, there are teachers in the schools and these organizations. They're coming for our kids.
Yeah.
But we're the ones in between.
That's right.
Let them try. But I will be this person who is going to be the confrontational person if I have to be. I will be the middle person.
Right.
And I will protect my kid.
Right.
So that's the hard part.
That is the hard part.
Of standing ground. I encourage other parents. I've said, I will show you how to do an open records request. I will show you how to do a grievance. I will help you understand what the levels of the grievances are, how to speak at a school board meeting, what you do. I started speaking at school board meetings because of that superintendent and what he had done. But it just continued from there. Yeah. But I will advocate for my child. I just think people and parents need to bring it to light.
Yep.
And don't be afraid. I think being in the shadows should be scarier.
It's way scarier. So, and that's, again, what all of this is about. It is that the parent empowerment movement is about giving the power back to parents who we want to make sure we have transparency into what our child is learning and why. Every child deserves a high quality education free from indoctrination. Respect for parents. We are the ultimate decision makers and the choice of where our child is going to school.
Right.
And who's teaching them, quite frankly.
Right.
I mean, that's critically important. And that is why this is so important. You're a public school parent. I'm a public school parent. Across the board, millions of parents have locked arms to say, we've had enough and we're fighting back. And you don't get to do this to our children and the next generation of Texas. Because if we don't stand our ground, the next generation of Texas is not going to be the greatest, most benevolent state in the greatest, most benevolent country that's ever existed.
People are shocked all the time.
We cannot protect the republic and continue to have the prosperity and the freedoms that we have if our children do not understand actual history and what has brought us to where we are. So, okay, before we wrap up, in that camera right there, you are a strong advocate for, you called yourself a mama bear in your district and really across Texas. Speak to the moms. Speak to the mom that she knows everything that you're saying is right. She's experienced these hard conversations with her own children. She knows that this grooming, indoctrination, desensitization is going on in her kid's classroom. Talk to her and tell her what she can do to fight back and join parents, join mama bears across Texas.
I know you're afraid as a one mom to another. I know you're afraid to speak up. I know that you're afraid to worry about getting outed and having something be happening to you and your child. But if you are not going to be the voice to protect your child, if you're not going to be that individual who investigates, who comes out of the shadows to be the voice for your child, to advocate for your child, I deplore you to do it. You're not alone. I felt alone, but knowing that I have found other parents, other moms, other dads, my husband, we are all supportive of each other but there are many of us out there. Reach out to other parents. Ask. Do it anonymously on social media if you can. But ask other parents, do you feel the same? Do you feel that your child is you're losing touch with your child because something is going on in school? Ask those questions. You have every right to do an open records request to a school about curriculum or anything that's going on in the classroom or in a sport, whatever your child's doing at the school. You have every right to put a grievance in for a school to ask and get answers. Don't stop, because if you do and things go silent, you may lose your child to an ideology that you never wanted them to understand or be supportive of. But if you don't stand up for your child, who will? And if you realize who does, it may not be someone or an organization or a group or an ideology that you ever thought would take your child and turn them into something you never wanted and wished for them. So be the parent, be the person you wanted to raise your child as, and find the support. We're all out there. Put it on social media because they're doing it every day. The other side, these other people who are out there advocating for their own mission and their own ideology, they're doing it on social media left and right. People like myself, people that I know, they stay silent. They hide behind the curtain because they're afraid. They want people like me to be their voice, but I implore you, I encourage you to get out from behind the shadows. Stand up for your child. Stand up for your own beliefs, your own ideology of what you've raised your children to be at home. So stand strong. We will lock arms, and God bless.
Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us for this awesome conversation, really
Thank you for
shining a
having me.
light on what's going on in far too many of our schools. And thank you for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.